will thrust you from your office, and from your station he will pull you down. Hello, everybody. This is Gilgamesh, and this is part 2 of Isaiah chapter 22. The first section, we read the Masa, the oracle concerning the Valley of Vision. This section here, we're going to look at the second section where we look at one of two of the high government officials that Isaiah addresses in this chapter. So there are 3 sections here, and this is the second section of it. We start off here in verse 15, and it says, "Thus saith the Master, Lord of hosts, go, come to the steward, to Shebna, who is over the household." So this beginning part here, "Thus saith the Master, Lord of hosts," it signals the beginning of a new prophecy, this time directed at Shebna. He is a high palace official who's over the house of the king or the palace. Shebna appears in the narrative of the siege in 2 Kings 19, as well as later on in the book of Isaiah itself. However, there he is assigned a different title, and some people think it may actually be a different Shebna than this one. That seems unlikely. I think this is the same person, probably. More than one person had the same name. He's listed here as the steward. Well, the word here is soken. It is a rare word, and that sometimes means some type of government official. It's not a title that Shebna is given anywhere else. We do see that this title is given in Ugaritic texts, particularly to individuals who are over the household of the king. So it seems it is an appropriate title here for a royal steward. Interestingly, the feminine of this noun, shokenet, occurs in 1 Kings chapter 1, verses 2 and 4, speaking of a young woman who was to serve King David in his old age by cuddling him to keep him warm. Make of that what you will. But this is not a very common title, and not very many people are given this title. It goes on here, "And say to him, what have you here? And who have you here? That you have hewn out there a tomb for yourself, hewing out on high this tomb, engraving in rock a dwelling for him." So we have this set of questions that we are to pose to Shebna. What have you here? Ma lachafo. It is quite similar to the question that we had posed back in verse 1, which was ma lach efo. Very similar wording here. It seems clearly a callback to that original question, and it poses 2 questions that are quite similar here in Hebrew. We have ma lachafo followed by umi lachafo. What to you is here, and who to you is here? We have these 2 questions here that seem to harken back to that first verse, which was posed to the revelers who had gone up to the roof. It seems to me that Isaiah is trying to make a direct connection between Shebna and those that were partying on the rooftops, the ones who famously said, "Eat and drink, for tomorrow we die." This makes sense once we're also talking about a tomb for Shebna here, which is the main thing that Isaiah draws attention to, that he's hewed himself out a tomb. Tombs for the aristocracy were typically in niches or caves, and Isaiah seems to take offense that Shebna has created this elaborate tomb for himself. And maybe this goes to the fatalistic attitude of the partiers who are wanting to live it up because there's no hope anyway. Shebna wants to get his memorial tomb set up properly so that he can have a memorial, since he's going to just be killed in the oncoming onslaught of the Akkadians. That would make sense. Now, the interesting thing is, though, we may have found his tomb. This that you're seeing here is from a tomb that was discovered in the 19th century, and we think it may have belonged to Shebna. It says, "This is the tomb of somebody," ending in IAH, which is a common ending on names, "which is over the house." We assume this means the royal house. This looks like a royal tomb, and so this would be somebody with a similar position to Shebna. There is no silver or gold here, only his bones and the bones of his maidservant with him. Cursed be the man who opens this. Always what you want to see on a place you're excavating. Nothing but good things happen from that. This is currently on display in the British Museum. Was it Shebna's? It's hard to say. Most of the name is obliterated, and if it belongs to Shebna, we believe that Shebna would be a shorter form of his name, which would be Shebnaya. It happens. It's quite common in the 8th century BCE. And this does date, based on epigraphic evidence, particularly to the right time period of Hezekiah here. So it's more than a little bit of chance that this could be his, but it's impossible to say for sure because that big hole in it is where the name should be. And we only have the last few letters of the name. But it was somebody who was over the house, and this seems like it fits nicely with what Isaiah is describing here. So if it wasn't this tomb, it was one very similar to it. So this is what Isaiah is concerned about, is that he is building a future for himself in an afterlife and apparently abandoning his duties here in this world. And so we come to verse 17, and we have a challenging thing to translate. We understand the gist of what it's saying. It's not very happy with Shebna, but the actual words get a bit challenging as to exactly what they mean. One translation is, "Behold, the Lord will throw you a throwing, man. He will hold on you a holding, and wind you around and around like a ball into a land of broad hands." What does that mean? It's hard to say. It sounds like the Lord is going to take hold of you, wrap you up into a little ball, and toss you out into this land of broad hands, or perhaps a broad land of hands. But yes, it sounds like he's going to kick you out. Now, there are a number of words here that we're not really sure how they should be read. Another translation out there would be something like, "The Lord is about to shake you as one shakes a garment, and wrap you around. He will surely wind you round like a turban away to a spacious land." That's Robert Alter's translation. There's a lot to like about it. But notice how different it is. When we talk about this fling you like a ball or wind you around like a turban, the Hebrew word here, sadath, it means to wind around. It doesn't really mean to throw or fling, we don't think. The end of the previous line, the previous verb, also seems to have the idea of wrap. And Robert Alter's main argument here is it looks like we are talking about clothing, like a garment of some kind. And notice that the first line here is, "The Lord will throw you a throwing, man." Kind of an interesting way to say it, but that's really what it says. Now we can make that "oh man" or something like that as a noun of direct address in English, but that's really what it says. The Lord will throw you a throwing, man. Well, the word man is gever. Well, if you swap the letters around and um, D's and R's look this very similar in Hebrew, you can get beged, which is garment. And so that's what Robert Alter does, is he modifies this word to be garment, a word that looks quite similar with two letters reversed. And that might make more sense here, that the Lord will shake you as one shakes a garment. Literally, he will shake you a garment shaking. That's kind of what it says here. So that's how Robert Alter takes this to make it then suddenly be about clothing. And this fits nicely because the next section, where we talk about Eliakim, it's going to be very clothing focused. And so it would make sense that we were focusing on this person's clothing. Clothing was an important sign of authority. And that is what we're attacking on this person here, is his authority as the steward over the house. While it is pretty nifty to think of him being squeezed up into a ball and tossed, that also is a translation that's out there, but it may not be the right sense of this. Now, the Hebrew in this is very fun. It has these repeated syllables in both the verb and the noun that Isaiah loves and he constantly uses. It has metalelka talela. Very interesting. We think, based on the Syriac and the Targum, that this could be an unusual spelling for another word that would be pronounced really the same way. There are two letters in Hebrew that are pronounced like a T, and if you were to swap those around to the other letter, it might mean a word that means to shake, which is where Robert Alter gets the idea of shaking rather than hurling or flinging. There are a series of words here that are repeated words, what we would call a cognate accusative, where the verb and the direct object come from the same root. This is where phrases like, I have dreamed a dream, is how we would say this in English. In English, it's often considered somewhat cliche, but in Hebrew, they love doing this. And so we have three of these all right next to each other in this little verse here. And the first one that we've already talked about here, metaltelka taltella. This is the possibly hurl you a hurling, fling you a flinging, or an unusual spelling of shake you a shaking. Then after that, we have va'otka ato. This could possibly mean and grab you a grabbing or hold you a holding. But another meaning of this word could possibly mean to delouse you a delousing. Again, coming back to the idea of a garment and this corrupt person pulling the lice off of the garment or shaking the lice off the garment. Another possible meaning of this word would be to wrap you a wrapping. So, three possible meanings of what this word could be. We're not sure which one is most appropriate here. The delousing is kind of appealing when we're talking about it being a garment and we're talking about him being a corrupt person in authority that maybe we need to shake the lice off the garment. Kind of disgusting, but it would fit the context of what we're talking about here. But the idea of wrapping does fit with the next verse, which has not two words with the same root, but three words with the same root. It has here, sanof yitznafka sanefa kador, which is winding and winding you a winding like a ball. The root here is winding, and in Hebrew they have a form called an infinitive absolute, which is used to express certainty or intensity. And so we don't quite have anything in English like this, but it's basically saying he will certainly wind you, or he'll tightly wind you, or he'll strongly wind you, anything like that that you can think of to express it in English. But in Hebrew, they often use the verb twice like this, first as an infinitive absolute, then a regular finite verb to express this type of certainty. And then after that, there is the noun based on the same thing. So we've got this word for winding three times there together. And then we say kador, which is like a round thing, which could be a ball, could be a turban. Since we're talking about winding, it generally thought that a turban might be a more appropriate thing because you don't really wind a ball. But the other possibility is that it might be a ball of thread, and that's been proposed as well, that he'll wind you up like a ball of thread. But we're not sure exactly what it means. But the idea, I think, is still the same, that he's being taken like a garment that is being discarded, and whether that is balling it up or whether that is winding it around, something is happening to Shebna here to remove from him the vestments of his office and leave him without his authority, which these vestments represent. And so he takes all of these and he is thrown into a land of broad hands, or into a broad land of hands. Now, the verb throw isn't actually there. It just says, I will wind you around, winding you like a turban to a land of broad hands. It's a strange expression. We're not sure why it's a land of broad hands. Maybe everybody there is wearing catcher's mitts. The idea here is that he is going to be sent out of his homeland to this other place. Now, since he's carving himself out a tomb, a monument to himself here, this might be an indication of him not getting to enjoy that. Yes, the idea here is that he is going to be either balled up and tossed to this faraway land, or he's being stripped of his vestments and sent to this faraway land. And what follows is rather unambiguous. There shall you die, and there shall be your glorious chariots, shame of your master's house. And it ends it here with a little chiasm. I will thrust you from your office, and from your station he will pull you down. Well, starting here with a reference to chariots, this probably is saying something about Shebna's authority, his excessive pride, which is going to be the disgrace to the royal family. Some have suggested this may be that he was trying to form an alliance with Egypt, and maybe that was going to be where this idea of chariots came from. We're not really sure why it mentions chariots here or the context of what Shebna was doing with these chariots, but they're not going to work out for him. They're going to actually be part of the shame that he faces. In the Hebrew here, it starts off with, I will thrust you, and it ends with, he will pull you down. There's this sudden shift from the first to the third person, and it's peculiar and abrupt, but it happens in Hebrew poetry from time to time. We're not sure exactly why. But yeah, it starts with the first person, I will do this, and then ends in the third person, he will do this. Some have suggested that the last verb might be better translated as a passive. So he will be pulled down, referring to Shebna himself. I will thrust you from your office, and from your station you will be pulled down, would probably be the way we would translate it. That is the prophecy of Shebna. Shebna's going to show up several more times in the story, like we mentioned, and his crimes are not mentioned in these other texts. In fact, he seems perfectly fine and even heroic in these other texts. So it's unclear why he was so utterly condemned for his pride here. It should be considered that maybe he got his act together. This is before this happens with the Assyrians, as we seem to be saying here. Maybe Isaiah made this prophecy and Shebna had a major change of heart. Maybe he then pulls it together and becomes a bit of a hero along with Eliakim later on. We don't know. People are not static, and it would be incorrect for us to think that because Isaiah criticizes him here in this short section that he was forever a bad guy and beyond redemption. We just don't know that. But this negative attitude towards him is not mentioned elsewhere. And when the invasion does come, he does appear to be a high official during the time of the invasion. So we don't know quite what's going on there. But that's Shebna. And next time we will take a look at his partner Eliakim, who gets a very different sort of prophecy. And I'll see you in that one. Until then, please like and subscribe, and have a good day.